Hello, Palm Stars, and welcome to the Rathole. I'm your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten. In NFL news, surprisingly, most games were able to be played in Week 5, including the Titans-Bills game that was postponed to Tuesday night. More on that game in the Mahowald Minute as well. The one game that was unable to be played was the Broncos-Patriots game, which has already been rescheduled for the future weeks. In league news, we had the assistant commissioner election, and congratulations to Assistant Commissioner Lukas Lorensen on his historic election to the office. I am looking forward to our partnership in his new role. Just as an update, this is now going to be a running tradition for the league to have an election each year, alternating between the assistant commissioner role and the commissioner role. The commissioner election will be held in the summer of 2021. Candidates, make sure to get your platforms and campaign staff in order. In other league news, we had a second important vote on Wednesday of this week regarding the league's views on the trade review period. Under our rules, we require 6 votes to change a league rule. Team owners and former assistant commissioner candidates Drew Mahowald and John Stevens put forth a proposal to remove the trade review period, not vetoes, just the review period, from the league. After some amount of debate, the final vote on removing the review period was 8-2 in favor of the rule change, as well as 8-2 in favor of removing it immediately, as opposed to beginning next season. As of that vote, trades will now be processed immediately. However, that said, any team owner can call for a veto of any trade still. That review period wasn't really adding anything of value. We still have the ability to veto trades should there be any evidence of collusion or dumping or tanking or anything of that nature. Should that trade make the 6 out of 10 mark to overturn the trade, that trade will be vetoed still, and players and picks will be returned to their original teams. Thanks all for a great discussion and happy trading. So, let's talk recaps then. In game 1 of week 5, Zach's gluten freaks were routed by Thomas and the dog sniffers. The freaks are now 3-2 after failing to reach 100 points for the second week in a row. This was in part due to just a rough game on Tuesday night where Josh Allen was held to a mere 16 points by the Tennessee defense. Fun fact, because Josh Allen was held to that score, I actually tied someone in a different league who had Josh Allen as their starting quarterback. So start thinking of tiebreaker rules for our league because that is something we have not clarified before. If you think there should be tiebreakers, start thinking of it. Or if you think that if you get a tie, you should just get a tie in the record book. Start thinking of that now so that we can have that discussion this offseason. It's unlikely to ever happen, but it did just happen to me in a different league, so I want to make sure we address it proactively. Anyways, back to the only important league that we all have, and it is the Pong Stars. For the Gluten Freaks, low points from Zach Ertz continues to be just a limiting factor for the Freaks. Hopefully, the inevitable return of some of the actual receivers for Philadelphia will be able to take away some of that top-tier coverage from the tight end. A few late touchdowns were scored for the Freaks after they got called out in a group message for being frauds, but despite that, this team is still definitely on the fraud or at least potential fraud list. Speaking of teams on the potential fraud list, it's the Dog Sniffers, who did have a great week 5 and got the highest points for in the league for week 5 at 139.16. Frustratingly for the haters of the Dog Sniffers, who laughed at this strategy of drafting tight ends early when you already had Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews and Kelce, the tight end set, continues to work extremely well for this team, with Kelce and Andrews combining for nearly 35 points. Through 5 weeks, Thomas and the Dog Sniffers have the highest number of tight end points at 115.4, and has the highest percentage of points from tight ends at 19.84% of his total points. Additionally, Thomas has the highest amount of points scored in a different category, and one that may surprise you. Thomas currently has 79 points from his defensive position, outscoring our defensive specialist, Brennan Swan, by 15 points so far this season. Baltimore defense has contributed 13.58% of the points of Thomas's team so far. The highest percentage in the league. A tight end and defense can really be decisive playmakers any given week and can give any team a competitive edge. So having reliable people in those positions are just as key as those running back, receiver, and quarterback spots to make a winning team. But I'm on to you, Thomas. I still think that you have potential fraud categorization. But let's move on to game 2, where we saw the Rock Plopsters take down the hot hand of the Spring Chickens, 111.46 to 103.8. The Chickens were coming off their extremely high score, and they really crashed back down to earth with a loss in week 5. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks struggled in their win over the Vikings for most of the game, with Chris Carson really being bottled up more than usual as well. They were able to salvage respectable fantasy scores despite that. But a little drop from that expected production was enough to put the Rock Plopsters ahead. In that game, there were some unfortunate developments on star quarterback Dalvin Cook, who's potentially going to be out for week 6 for precautionary reasons. And then there's the week 7 bye for the Vikings. Luckily, new running back Alexander Madison will be there to pick up any potential injury spots. Now, to the Rock Plopsters. They snuck away with a win in this one over that high-powered Chickens team, despite injuries and bye weeks, really hurting their starting lineup. Backup quarterback Ben Roethlisberger was able to post 21 points in week 5 before being traded away to the Chickens. Looks like Brennan liked what he saw in that game and did manage to get a trade for that quarterback this week. Looking at the rest of this team, though, the Plopsters had Miles Sanders and his 76-yard touchdown run to thank for a great score on Sunday, as well as Robbie Anderson, the former Chicken, for a solid week 5 performance. Overall, a great week for the Plopsters as they moved to 4-1 on the year. In game 3, we had Worse Than Trash up against Glass Bones and Paper Skin. Worse Than Trash was able to take the win this week, 110.26 to 85.24. Man, Lucas has had a really rough year in the injury department. We all know. And despite having the highest scoring receiver in this week, Lucas was unable to overcome that depth problem created by injuries, especially in the running back department this week. Singletary and Hines had some just really difficult matchups against stout defensive lines in week 5. Hopefully that won't be the case in each week moving forward. Luckily for this team, Jonnu Smith has been a bright spot for this team. In week 5, scored 2 touchdowns and 18.5 points. There's some chatter that potentially Kittle and Jonnu Smith could be keepers for this squad moving into 2021. Tony, on the other hand, finally played the correct quarterback after doing, a full house cleaning in that position over the waiver wire leading up to week 5. He was able to play Justin Herbert, who did score over 20 points in that position for the first time this year for this squad. Overall, this was a pretty strong performance for this team in week 5. Nothing really bad to say about anybody on the team. DJ Moore scored 17.3 points. Hunter Henry and Stephon Diggs played well, and just really, this team actually had a pretty good week. Congrats on the second win to Worse Than Trash. In game number 4, we had the Revengers versus the Gruesome Grinders, where we had our other, 1-3 matchup going into week 5. But the injuries just keep coming to the Revengers, who were unable to snag a win this week. Dak Prescott, we all saw, went down in his game against the Giants with a horrific ankle injury and left the game with just 12.94 points scored before that. That really was the killer, even with Mike Davis scoring the highest running back score of the week for the Revengers. Now, a new player for this team, Calvin Ridley, did have a great week with 17.6 points, and it's looking like that was a really good trade for Noel. Noel and the Revengers may struggle with bye weeks in week 6, though, but definitely coming back in week 7. In my opinion, this will still be the scariest team in the league. The Gruesome Grinders fought hard for this win with a nicely above average week for just about every player on this team. They were working well as a cohesive unit. Derrick Henry, Kareem Hunt, David Montgomery all scored over 15 points. Actually, Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt both scored exactly 16.8 points, which is pretty neat. Anyways, the GGs get a GG from me and escape with a win over the high-powered Revengers. In our week 5 game of the week, we had Sam and the Google team names facing off against Josh and not trading Lamar. The names leave with a solid win of 118.8 to 86.3 and moved to 4-1. Josh moves to 3-2 and also moves onto the list of potential frauds with Zach and Thomas after week 5. For not trading Lamar, team namesake Lamar Jackson only scored 13.5 points against Cincinnati, which what happened to that man that lowered his ceiling so far this year? Either way, even if Lamar had scored better, it probably wouldn't have been enough to overcome weak performance from James Robinson, an injury to DJ Chark, an injury to Deontay Johnson, or just a weak performance from Hayden Hurst. But let's look at some bright spots. And it's the running back core for this team. Ezekiel Elliott and Todd Gurley continue to perform very well. And Elliott will definitely be more in line to get more usage, as Dak Prescott will be out for the season, as well as Todd Gurley could be in line for more carries with a new head coach in Atlanta. Still, Josh remains on the potential fraud list for this week, and joins Zach and Thomas on that list as well. Now, Sam won the match and the traveling trophy of the golf ball whacker guy with his 118.8 score. He was led by DK Metcalf with 24.3 points and 2 touchdowns against the Vikings. Additionally, Kyler Murray had a great week going against a weak Jets team, scoring 26.3 points for the Names. The Names continue to be a solid team. We'll just have to see how that plays out with these coming bye weeks. Now, let's head on over to the fun fact of the week. This week's fun fact of the week is centered around trading, like our league just loves to do. I'm going to focus on the number of trades in relations to acquisitions over the year here. We've had 36 teams prior to this season, so I'm not including any 2020 teams. Of those teams, I've tracked acquisitions, including trades over the year. So far this year, we have had over 20 trades, including the trades that have occurred on or before October 15th. 22 of those 36 teams made less acquisitions in a full season than we have made collectively trades as a group this season. Yeah, 22 out of 36 teams make less acquisitions than our entire league likes to trade. And quite frankly, that could be overtaken by even more teams if we continue to trade at the rate we are trading. A lot of teams were pretty close to being at that limit as well. So keep those trades up. It's definitely an exciting part of our league. And I'm really happy to see all of the activity. But let's head on over to the Mahowald Minute now.
Guys, Mahowald Minute here on the Rathole, which I think is the best show on the internet that covers the Pawn Stars Fantasy Football League. We are, 12 hours, not even, 11 hours after the Titans have beaten the Bills on Tuesday Night Football. And I don't know if you guys saw some of the comments last night from some of the Titans players, Ryan Tannehill, Taylor Lewan. They said they felt disrespected, and they said that they felt like they were being hated for the last couple of weeks. And I'm like, well, yeah, you disrespected the entire league by breaking protocol, by getting together and doing a private workout, which was clearly prohibited by the NFL. You had a coach test positive for COVID on Saturday, and then the next day in Minneapolis, played a game at US Bank Stadium against the Vikings. Miraculously, nobody on the Vikings got COVID-19. Fantasy managers everywhere are struggling with decisions to make because of all these scheduling changes, because you guys are being stupid and breaking protocol. I cannot
Thanks, Drew, for those words. Now, I did have the honor of inaugurating Lukas Lorensen to the office of Assistant Commissioner. Let's head on over to that ceremony now. Welcome, Lukas, to commissioner role. Yeah.
Woo!
Yep, you're commissioner.
Yes,
So,
the assistant commissioner. You're still the commissioner there.
Well,
but
you're new assistant commissioner. So as of this very second, you have been inaugurated and welcome to the team.
Wow, thank you. I'm so glad.
All right, thanks. All right, thanks for joining. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks to the newly inaugurated Assistant Commissioner Lorensen. Now, before we get into next week, we got some activity that we got to take care of from this week in between games, and that is just the, quite frankly, ridiculous amount of trade talks. Thank you to John and Sam for joining me on this episode of Trade Talks. It's wonderful to have both of you here. I know, Sam, you've been involved in a lot of trades over the last couple of weeks, but John, I think this is your first in-season trade, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure it's exciting for you to finally, make the segment here.
Oh yeah, totally. I love appearing on the Rathole as much as I can. So sadly, haven't been able to make too many appearances in Trade Talks, but here we finally are again.
Yeah, so let's talk about this trade then that you guys had. When we're recording this, it's maybe 3-4 hours after the fact. So still pretty fresh in your minds and the league's minds. John, you traded away your first round pick of Juju Smith-Schuster, your 2020 first round pick, for Aaron Rodgers, who was drafted late this year, as well as a 2021 second round pick, and from you, your own 2021 second round pick, as well as Sam's third round 2021 pick. So a lot of moving pieces from the Google team names over to the Rock Plopses, and that one big piece moving from the Rock Plopses over to the Google team names. So just whoever wants to start, who initiated these trade talks?
So we've actually been talking about trading Aaron Rodgers probably John, for the last 3 weeks, give or take.
Yeah, I'd say pretty much since the season started, Sam's been definitely gauging my interest in Rodgers because I'm a Packers fan, obviously.
I was just say, and it has just kind of slowly. It started off originally as just kind of what was the interest level, and that it has just slowly grown week by week. And as Aaron Rodgers is clearly having one heck of a season after the Packers draft Jordan Love to piss him off, I guess, if that works. But no, it's slowly grown. And then this morning, and as the game started, I think John shot me a text and just said, "Hey, what are you actually thinking?" And we just kind of slowly, as those morning games were progressing, we just kind of slowly came to an agreement.
Yeah, that's great. Sam, last week you made a trade that was, not this one. We don't need to get into that, but just a question for you. How many trade offers came your way after that trade last week before you finally settled on making this one today?
Well, prior to the one last week, I had multiple offers from about everybody in the league almost for different wide receivers. Ended up making the trade that I did last week, and doesn't look great through 1 week, but we'll see. It definitely was a trade made in the interest of bye weeks for me coming up here in the next couple of weeks to try and keep this train rolling. I know not a lot of people saw it that way, but that was kind of this will be my one public stance on it, that it was more of a bye week down the road play than anything. But then this week, after that, had a couple more for wide receivers of mine, and just didn't really feel anything was right until this trade with John.
Yeah, so John, let's head over to you then. Obviously, with the addition of Aaron Rodgers, you now have Cam Newton and Rodgers on your team. Talk to me about that interaction between those two quarterbacks. Who do you think is going to be the starter moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think going into next week, assuming both players are able to play given the COVID situation, I think I'll probably be going with Aaron Rodgers in the first week back, especially with them coming off a bye. I think I'll roll with him, and he's been the better quarterback so far this season. Cam Newton obviously is very dependent on his running game, and when he doesn't score a rushing touchdown or two, it definitely hurts his production. So I think Aaron Rodgers will definitely be the starter going forward, but I definitely will be keeping Cam Newton. I think given the just very weird situation that we're dealing with right now, the possibility that the NFL might introduce a couple more weeks into the season, which would potentially mean more buys. I don't mind having two quarterbacks on my team and two quarterbacks that can both produce week in and week out. So Aaron Rodgers will be the starter going into next week, but from there it'll be a week by week analysis, but we'll probably be leaning towards Rodgers most weeks.
So one part of fantasy football obviously is, looking at players individually, but then also team by team. And John, now you have 3 starters from your home team of the Green Bay Packers. Tell me, are you excited about that, or are you nervous about putting all your eggs in one basket moving forward?
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of nerves there. I did reach out to Sam during the negotiations to ask if he was interested in trading Kyler Murray, just given how productive Aaron Rodgers was. As I expected, he wasn't really willing to move him. So I was fine with getting Rodgers. Obviously, I'm not super thrilled about having a starting running back, wide receiver, and quarterback from the same team, because if they have a down week, I could be in trouble. I'm probably going to lose. But given the Packers' offensive production so far this season, scoring 30 or more points in every single game they've played, against some suspect teams, but some good teams as well, I think that it's a good move. I think it is definitely a gamble, but if the Packers have a season again where they go 13-3 or potentially even better, I'm going to be in a good spot. So it's just going to give me even more reason to cheer for the Packers. Definitely love cheering for the Packers, and this just adds another piece to that.
Yeah. So Sam, back to you then on getting Juju Smith-Schuster. You had the opportunity to draft Juju in your first round. You ended up going with Jonathan Taylor instead. Was Juju ever on the draft board for you, or is this just an unexpected development getting him on your team at all?
I mean, he was definitely high on the draft board in the wide receiver slot there. Was he somebody that I was targeting throughout the season to trade for? Not necessarily. He just kind of ended up being where John and I could compromise on a talent level that I thought was willing and worth the trade. But yeah, he was more of just, he's definitely a great talent. And as Big Ben now shows, he can sling the football still. Unfortunately, it was all the Claypool this week, but maybe that means that he takes some attention next week and Juju can get back to his ways starting next week when he's on my squad. So that was, it was more of just a opportunity, right place, right time for us to take him.
Is Juju looking like a keeper for you next year?
It's really going to just see how the whole year pans out. There's very, very few guys on my team that I've locked in those spots. There are a couple, but there's probably three keeper spots still up for grabs, and we'll see who plays the best down the stretch, and mostly what kind of the offseason looks like for each one of those players.
Gotcha. John, trading for Aaron Rodgers, you were one of the 3 teams. Originally, there were only 2 teams that were not keeping a quarterback coming into 2020 season. With the production level of Aaron Rodgers and the rest of the Green Bay Packers, do you think that there's a possibility that Aaron Rodgers will be a keeper, getting that up to at least 3 Packers moving into the 2021 season?
Yeah, it's definitely a consideration. I think so far my initial thought is no. I think so far the move to keep only running backs and wide receivers has worked well for me, especially because Nick Chubb went down. I had that second, really high quality back to just plug in the spot. Obviously, if Aaron Rodgers continues to do what he does, it's going to be hard to ignore him and hard to not keep him. I didn't keep him last season because obviously last season he wasn't nearly as productive fantasy-wise as he has been this season, but it'll be a consideration going down the road. I'm not really thinking too much about it right now. Obviously, it's going to really also depend on the other guys that I'm planning on keeping. So, that's a thought for another day, but just happy to have him on the team now and hopefully have a real starting quarterback because Cam Newton hasn't been able to play the last few weeks with COVID. So, it's just nice to have him on the team.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to both of you for joining me on this episode of Trade Talks. I'm sure I'll catch both of you real soon for another one.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. Have a good one. Welcome, folks, to this episode of Trade Talks with future Dr. Brennan Swan and John Stevens, our esteemed team owner. Not doctor. But we're happy to have you both here. Let's talk trades. This week has been, quite frankly, there has been an abundance of them. And since we got rid of the trade review period, almost too many, one might say. So let's talk about yours first. So Brennan, you ended up trading with John earlier this week, where you took Ben Roethlisberger and a 2021 third round pick for your 2021 second round pick. So Brennan, let's start with you. What made you decide to pursue this trade? Who started it out?
It's a great question, Zach. J-Dog reached out to me early this week just with that specific kind of a trade down of picks where he'd get around higher. And, I wanted to go with my guy, Joe Burrow, this week, but just due to the kind of lackluster performance he had last week, I decided to take John up on his offer. So I think I got a good QB in Big Ben, at least for this week, while my guy Russ is on bye.
Yeah, I know those bye weeks are definitely going to be incoming. John, you were able to trade earlier for Aaron Rodgers, who had his bye in week 5. I assume you'll probably be sticking with him moving forward. So really, did you need Ben on the team at all was sort of your question, I'm sure.
Right, yeah, and no, I obviously really didn't. That's why I was reaching out to a few people. I reached out to Lukas as well because I knew he had some quarterback questions just to see if anybody was interested before I dropped him. If Brendan and I didn't make a deal, I probably would have ended up dropping Ben today or yesterday. So it was nice to get a little bit of trade value out of him from my good friend Brendan Swan. And, I think he's happy with it. That way he didn't have to compete on the waiver wire for him. Really hot player right now, Ben Roethlisberger. So I think it worked out for both of us.
Yeah, John, you've done a pretty good job on your quarterbacks this year. I mean, you dropped the loser Matt Stafford pretty quick into the season, pick up some waiver wire talent and get some trade value out of them. That's definitely good. Brennan, moving forward, is there going to be any trouble in paradise for your team? Is Russ on the watch list where he's going to have to compete for that starting spot?
After his performance last week, I put him on the trade block. I was pretty pissed off with him. Honestly, hate that guy, but love that guy at the same time. So I think he's going to come back and he's going to continue to play for me. But just pretty mad.
Were you mad at his fantasy performance, or were you mad that he beat the Vikings?
I'm going to have to go with the latter, that he beat the Vikings.
All right.
This is me off.
I respect the hell out of it, Brennan. I respect it.
I personally love that you put it up just immediately after the game. It really showed your mental state at the time, and it's good to see. I think I sent you a trade request pretty quick for Russ too.
Yep.
Didn't take me up on it though.
Well, you put Russ and Carson for like Kenyon Drake and a 4th rounder, so I was pretty pissed off.
No, I don't even think it was that good. I think it was Mark Ingram and a 4th rounder. But Brennan, trade me Russ. But anyways, that's gonna conclude our segment of Trade Talks. Thank you both of you for joining me, and we'll catch you very soon, both of you.
Sounds good.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks, Zach.
All right. Welcome to this episode of Trade Talks with Brennan Swan and Drew Mahowald. Thank you, both of you, for joining me for this episode. So we had a trade that came after some potential injury concerns for star running back on the Spring Chickens, Dalvin Cook, where Drew traded backup Alexander Madison, as well as a 2021 second round, 5th round, and 7th round pick to Brennan Swan for his 2021 first round and a 2021 third round. So let's go with Drew Mahowald first. Did you reach out to Brennan, or did Brennan reach out to you to institute these trade talks?
I think earlier in the week, I think when Dalvin got hurt, I kind of jokingly was like, hey, I got Madison, who you want, guy? And then I think Brennan realized, all right, I actually do need a running back this week. So then we reached out to me later in the week, and we had some discussions about draft picks, and it wasn't actually much of a lengthy debate or discussion on this. It was pretty smooth.
So, Brennan, you ended up giving a first-round pick for Alexander Madison. Are you still happy with that decision, or walk me through that process?
Sure. I have kind of a philosophy, Zach, that I obviously want to maintain my picks, but even losing that first rounder, Drew giving me 3 picks back within the top 8 rounds, I'm looking for more of a better draft overall. I'm not as concerned about losing a first rounder, especially when I needed a back. And as you guys know, I've only said this 85 times, I'm in a win now mode. So wanting to get Madison, and if the Vikings play and he plays well, I'll definitely be happy with the outcome of this trade.
Was there ever any talk about potentially a player from the Chickens heading over to the Grinders in this trade as well, or was it just the picks?
Very briefly, I think Brennan mentioned some receivers, and I think it was truthfully, I think I looked at it as I would rather have a little bit of more of an upgrade in the draft, right? Move up in the rounds a little bit. And I think plus, being like Hollywood Brown is maybe an option. I think that would require, maybe a little bit more to give up as well. So I think we both felt that the draft picks was the way to go.
Yeah. I mean, Brennan, in your mind, do you see, as the Vikings do, sort of if Dalvin's not there, Madison is just as good, he fits in just as well, or are you, is this just more of an insurance policy with a little bit lower expectation from this back?
And that with the Zimmer mentality of running the ball the way the Vikings do, I think having Madison is almost, if not as valuable as having Dalvin. Dalvin might be a little bit more explosive, a little bit stronger, can get it around the edge a little quicker. But I think having Madison, watching him play a couple games this year, he looked pretty good. So I think it's going to be a good option for me.
Drew, you ended up with that first round pick. Is that going to be on the block at all for you moving forward into 2021?
Well, I traded one for David Montgomery, so I mean it's for sure going to be on the block down the stretch here. And for how much this league likes to trade, I'm sure there'll be offers all over the place. And who knows if I'll have that same pick in 2 weeks from now. So absolutely, it's on the board or on the block, I should say.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks to both of you for joining me on this episode of Trade Talks. It's been wonderful having you. Guaranteed I'll see you again in the future.
I'm making trades. Nope.
We'll see. Welcome, folks, to this episode of Trade Talks between John Stevens and Lukas Lorensen. Now, when we're recording this, the trade broke about 5 hours ago, maybe 6, between you two, where we got Cam Newton and Jamison Crowder heading over to Glass Bones and Paper Skin, and getting Kenny Galladay to head on over to the Rack Plapstas. So, John, let's start with you. What was the impetus behind getting this trade done?
Yeah, I mean, going back to last season, going back to the beginning of the season, this week was kind of the week that I was targeting to make trades because I knew that I would have Darren Waller on bye, and I would also, before COVID happened, this was supposed to be Cam Newton's bye week, and I don't really love having 2 tight ends and 2 quarterbacks on my team because then it fills up the bench. So this was at the beginning of the season, the week that I was targeting to make a lot of moves. And then obviously with the trade with Sam to get Aaron Rodgers, I didn't need Cam Newton anymore. And with Aaron Rodgers having his bye last week, it worked out perfectly timing-wise. So I wanted to get rid of Cam Newton as quickly as possible just so I could free up that roster spot for an extra wide receiver running back, which can be super valuable, given COVID and injuries right now. Just want to have as much depth as possible. So that was kind of the motivation.
Lukas, Kenny Galladay was a keeper for you last year.
Yes.
What was the reasoning for getting rid of one of your star players in this trade?
Well, I mean, with him coming off his injury, he's been performing well, but I don't know if I can trust it. And getting Crowder was a sure thing. He's like a main target for the Jets. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to him scoring some major points because of that. and getting Cam Newton on top of that is just a plus because I can finally get rid of some of the older guys that I had for my quarterbacks. So time to get them out of here and get them replaced. So,
all right. John, was Kenny Golladay someone that you've been targeting for a trade for a while? I know earlier in the season you talked pretty highly of the receiver.
Yeah, definitely. Like you mentioned, I talked about it a lot earlier in the season. I wasn't really shy. I've been reaching out to Lucas, offering him trades throughout the entire season for Kenny Golladay, as he'll probably let you know. So this was a long time coming, and seeing that Lucas needed a quarterback and I had an extra one, this seemed like the perfect opportunity to make that last push to get him on my squad. And I'm super happy to now have the top receiver from 3 of the NFC North teams. So keeping it at home here in the Midwest.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like Lucas, you still have Thielen?
I do.
Yeah. Well, maybe you guys can get another trade in the works to get that 4th guy.
Over there. No. Well, that's going to be a hard pass.
All right. Well, congratulations on your trade. I'm sure I'll see you several more times before our week 11 trade deadline, both of you. So maybe, John, we'll see. But thanks for joining, and we'll see you later.
All right, peace out.
Welcome to this episode of Trade Talks, boys. It's great to have you here with me today to discuss your trade that you guys had. Let me pull it up here. Yes, I remember this one. Sorry, there's so many that I can't keep track of them anymore. So I gotta have my notes up.
Me neither.
The trade you guys had was, it broke late on October 14th. Lucas, you traded Justin Jefferson and your 2021 first rounder for Darrell Henderson, and Josh's 2021 third rounder from Tony. So tell me, who started these trade talks?
I think it was Tony.
I don't even know. It kind of just happened.
Well, I know that, Lucas, you put Justin Jefferson up on the trading block.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like 10 minutes later, you had made 2 trades. I
think I ended up engaging in it just because I looked at his team and he kind of needed a running back, I thought.
You're correct.
And he had kind of a surplus of wide receivers. Then I saw that he traded for another wide receiver, and I was like, dang it, now he's not going to want to trade.
Well, but yeah, Lucas, let's talk about your running back situation. Your 2 keeper running backs are either dead to the rest of the season or on a different team now. So you're running with Devin Singletary and Nyheim Hines prior to this trade. Now you have Darrell Henderson, who seems to be the lead back in the committee in the Rams offense right now. So is Darrell Henderson going to be a for sure starter for you for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, the guy, he's been performing decent and he's young. He's might even be a potential keeper into next year, so long as he keeps doing well. And, like you said, my main guys were out and I was just kind of playing with some jank and had to get rid of them. So I had the talent stacked up from my wide receivers, so I was willing to make that trade. And as far as the first round pick, I mean, that was a little much, but I just could not get Tony to accept the trade without the damn first round pick.
Yeah, so Tony, was this trade more for you trying to get a receiver, or was it you trying to get a pick?
Trying to get a first round pick. Okay. I looked at Henderson like he wasn't going to be a keeper, and who knows when Cam Akers takes the role of lead back. So I wanted to get rid of him while he is on top, I guess, and get as high of a draft pick as I can. And I got Justin Jefferson in the mix too now as a potential keeper.
All right. Well, I personally think it was, a good trade. Lucas, You did text me separately saying that you did actually negotiate this trade first. You didn't actually just accept any trade going your way. So
No, you're correct.
I know
was
I
just making a
appreciated
joke.
that because I was like, dang, I should have sent you a worse trade.
No,
But
I think it was a good trade. I mean, it does kind of suck to see Justin Jefferson leave, but he wasn't getting targeted as much as Thielen. And since I already have Thielen on my team for now, who knows how long Thielen is going to be still targeted the most. So
Right.
at least for now, it's safe. But Tony, I think in the future will be in a better spot. Once Thielen starts to kind of be phased out, and Justin Jefferson starts to get moved in more. But
perfect.
for now, I think it was a good deal for me. So
Wonderful. Well, thanks to both of you for joining, and I'm sure I'll see you again on another episode of Trade Talks.
yeah, maybe in like 5 minutes. Zach, do we need to do our trade talk?
Yeah. All right. Once Tony leaves, we'll do ours. But
Maybe once he wants his first round pick back, I'll just send it back to him. So
yeah, we'll see about that. All right. Thanks, boys. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
yep, see ya.
Welcome, Lucas, to this episode of Trade Talks.
Hey, what's up? Feels like it's been a
long time no talk. It's great to have you here. Let's talk about our trade. You put John Brown on the
Browntown
on the trade block.
chop.
I sent you an initial offer for sending you Brandon Ayuk for John Brown,
And I accepted it
and you
immediately.
accepted it. Good trade
Yep.
talk. We'll see you next time.
Good job. Thanks for the deal.
Do I have time to do I have time to take a break? Oh, we're back. All right. Let's get over to our most calming segment, and it is the rankings. I guarantee with this calming music, nobody's blood will ever boil looking at where other people place their team, I'm sure. Man, I feel very relaxed now. I hope all of you do as well. But let's head over to the matchup previews for this week. In game number 1, we have the number 1 ranked Rock Plopstas up against the number 3 ranked Gluten Freaks in the former roommate battle. Zach has a 7-6 record in regular season against John and the overall record of 9-6. But John has the points for advantage in regular season by 21.9 points over Zach. So it'll definitely be an interesting matchup. It is every time. So far this year, the Rock Plopstas have outscored the Gluten Freaks in both the running back and wide receiver category, but not in the quarterback category. However, Aaron Rodgers is now the starter for this Rock Plopsta squad, rounding out the trio of starting Packers. If the Packers play well this week, it'll definitely be a tough lineup for anybody who has to face the Plopstas. But if they play poorly, and especially this week against, pretty good Tampa Bay defense, well, who's to say how this matchup will go? Certainly could be tough with both teams relying heavily in the past few weeks on Raiders players who are on bye in week 6. And that includes starting running back Josh Jacobs and starting tight end Darren Waller for these two teams. Now, let's move on to game 2, where we have the number 2 ranked Spring Chickens versus number 9 ranked Worse Than Trash. The Chickens are in bye and injury hell this week, pretty much, and I wouldn't be able to call myself a sportscaster if I didn't use the word, so let's go ahead and use it. This team is decimated in week 6 here. Wilson and Carson are both on bye. Cook will be limited if he plays at all. It'll definitely be tough yet. You got Alexander Madison now on the Spring Chicken squad, but if it's a game time decision, if Cook only plays a little bit, it'll be tough to find a who he wants to go with. Jason Myers and Russell Wilson are on bye. Chris Carson's on bye. CeeDee Lamb is still going to be getting used to Andy Dalton at quarterback. Overall, this is just really not a great week for the Chickens, just with everything going on contextually. So it's going to be a tough matchup for the Chickens to score those points that we're used to. However, Worse Than Trash recently acquired Justin Jefferson, which could be the boost this team needs to get a strong streak going. Every single week, we really know what the question is with Worse Than Trash. And it's whether or not Tony will play the best quarterback he has. Last week he did, but one data point is not a trend, and I'm excited to see how it goes in week 6. Brennan currently leads all time against Tony 1-0. In game number 3, we have the number 10 ranked Glass Bones and Paper Skin up against the potential frauds number 8 ranked Not Trading Lamar. The biggest question for Lucas will be if the new running back edition of Darrell Henderson and new quarterback edition of Cam Newton will be enough to overcome those running back woes and quarterback woes that Lucas has currently been having. Against San Francisco last week, looking at running backs, I would have said that it's tough sledding who Darrell Henderson will be playing against, but then Miami rocked San Fran, and now I'm really unsure. Henderson is either going to be 4 points or 20, no in between, in my opinion. Now, on to Josh and Not Trading Lamar. Lamar Jackson only put up 13.5 points on Cincinnati, and it's not awesome. But this week, Chris Godwin and A.J. Brown should be back in the lineup after overcoming their injuries. If those two keepers can get back to their top-tier production, Not Trading Lamar will for sure have a great week. Really, it's anyone's game in week 6, but Josh is 2-0 all-time over Lucas. In game number 4, we have the number 6 ranked Revengers versus number 7 ranked Dog Sniffers. All-time no leads Thomas 3-2 in their record. As mentioned, pretty much every week, the Revengers have been hammered by injuries this year. We all know this. And week 6 is just really not an ideal week for this team, with star players McCaffrey, Prescott, Kamara, and Thomas all injured or on bye. But that's not to say this team is underpowered by any means. Mike Davis was the highest scoring running back in week 5. Joe Mixon was the highest scoring running back in week 4. Tyler Higbee was the highest scoring tight end in week 2. And was being thrown to by discount Ryan Gosling quarterback Jared Goff, who is also on this team. Additionally, Calvin Ridley is going up against the Minnesota secondary, so that's probably worth an extra 30 points right off the bat. So moving on to Thomas, the Dog Sniffers are on fraud alert for sure coming into this match 3-2 somehow. Former Dog Sniffer player T.Y. Hilton is back on the team after getting dropped to waivers and will be looking to provide some great value against a weak Cincinnati team. This week, Kelsey and Andrews will be up against a little bit tougher defenses as well. It'll be definitely interesting to see if these potential frauds can take on one of the toughest opponents in the league. Now, let's head on over to the Pong Stars Game of the Week. This week, we have the number 4 ranked Google team names versus the number 5 ranked Gruesome Grinders in the South Dakota Bowl. So far, I've been very impressed at the tenacity of both of these teams this season. Waiver wire pickups, trades, both teams are definitely in it to win it. So let's get into this matchup. First, we have the Gruesome Grinders, who are coming off their second win of the season over the Revengers. Potential starter Alexander Madison was traded away this week, but it doesn't really matter because the GGs have Montgomery, Henry, and Hunt to start for this team. Hill and Cup are in at wide receiver, and the surprise tight end breakout of Tanyan will be in as well. Dan Bailey's back as well, and a Colts defense against a weak Cincinnati team should be really good. This is definitely a powerhouse Week 6 team going into this matchup. The names, however, are no slackers. Damian Harris and Jonathan Taylor, and maybe Melvin Gordon if he isn't suspended. Starting at running back, the receiving core is fantastic with Juju Smith-Schuster, Mari Cooper, and Will Fuller available for options there. This team really has great potential in Week 6. All-time, Sam has never won against Drew, going 0-3 on that record. At the end of this matchup, I hope we can at least say one South Dakotan played well. Now, let's head on over to the Pong Stars Pick'em. Welcome, folks, to this week's episode of the Pong Stars Pick'em. Thank you to my Pick'em partners here for joining me this week. I'm pumped for Week 6 coming up. So let's get it right into the matchups. The first matchup that we have is none other than the Rock Plopstas against the Gluten Freaks in game number 1 of Week 6. So, Drew, let's start with you. Let's go with your picks first. Who do you got in the game between the Rock Plopstas and the Gluten Freaks?
I got the Rock Plopstas in this one.
All right. Fair enough. Remember, if it's your lock, make sure to mention that as well. But let's go down to John Stevens then. Your own team versus the Gluten Freaks.
I am going with the Rock Plopstas.
Sorry.
The Rock Plopstas. I was very pleased with my team's performance with a lot of guys on bye and injuries last week, so looking to keep it going next week.
All right, let's go over to Thomas then. Between the Rock Plopstas and the Gluten Freaks.
Here I got to choose the Rock Plopstas, simply because I think they got a lot of players coming back, and I think they'll continue to do and perform very well.
All right, sounds good. Sam, let's head over to you then. The Rock Plopstas versus the Gluten Freaks.
I've got the Rock Plopstas.
All right. Oof. All right, and Noel will go over.
I can't do that quite with my voice yet.
That's fine. COVID Sam over here. Let's go with Noel Tigan then between the Rock Plopstas and the Gluten Freaks.
Yeah, I'm going against the grain. I'm picking the Gluten Freaks.
Thank you. Foolish, but thank you. I'm choosing the Rock Plopstas in this matchup. With Raiders on bye and Seahawks on bye, my team is just going to have a tough week with a lot of starters out. So let's head on down to game number 2 then. John, we're going to start with you in game number 2. Between the Spring Chickens and Worse Than Trash.
I am taking the Spring Chickens this week, despite a couple of really important bye weeks there for the Seahawks, especially. But I still just don't believe Tony's team at all. So I'm taking the Spring Chickens.
All right, fair enough. Thomas Strong, let's head over to you. Spring Chickens or Worse Than Trash?
This is a hell of a matchup right here at this specific week, but I got to take Worse Than Trash. I'm going to go with the upset here.
Risky. All right. Big upset would that one be? So
that would make them slightly worse than trash.
Just slightly.
Just barely better than Worse Than Trash. Let's go to Sam then. Sam, between the Spring Chickens and Worse Than Trash.
I got the Spring Chickens.
All right. Noel Tigan, the Spring Chickens or Worse Than Trash? Who do you got?
Yeah, as Thomas was saying, with Swan's team having a couple of buys, I'm picking Tony as my lock this week.
Oh.
I think it should be worth triple points because it's Tony, but
that is, that.
I tell you what, if you pick Tony again, if you pick Tony in a lock again next week, then I'd say that should be worth 3 points.
Fair enough. I don't think it'll ever happen again. At all.
I am taking Brennan and the Spring Chickens over Worse Than Trash. I agree with John. I just can't pick Tony's team. It's a principal thing at this point. And let's head over to Drew then to round off this one.
Yeah, I've got Worse Than Trash. Also, Brennan will be without Dalvin Cook probably, unless he trades for Madison from me. But so I think a decimated team is going to lose this week for Brennan.
All right, fair enough. Let's head to game number 3 here, where we have Glass Bones and Paper Skin, new assistant commissioner Lukas Lorensen versus Not Trading Lamar, Josh's team. Thomas, we're going to start with you on this one. Who you got between Lucas and Josh?
I've got Not Trading Lamar to win here, and I just think it's an atrocious week for a not so good team.
All right. Sam, let's head over to you. Between Glass Bones or Not Trading Lamar, who you picking?
I've got Not Trading Lamar as my lock. I think with Ezekiel Elliott going to have to take a bigger workload for Dallas, and Lucas's team he can't get anything going in his direction this year.
That is my lock as well. Sorry.
Okay. Good. Noel, let's head to you then, between Lucas and Josh Palinko.
Yeah, I got Not Trading Lamar rolling Glass Bones and Paper Skin by at least 50 this week.
By
But he's not taking him as his lock.
Wow.
50.
I am going to also take Not Trading Lamar as my lock. I think Josh's team is a bunch of frauds, but they can at least beat this team for sure. So
Hot take.
let's head over to Drew Mahowald then.
I also have Not Trading Lamar in this matchup comfortably. Not quite as comfortably as Noel has it, but good win for Not Trading Lamar.
All right, John Stevens, to you then. Between Glass Bones or Not Trading Lamar?
I'm also taking Not Trading Lamar. It is my lock of the week, and I am going to make a bold prediction like Noel. I'm saying over 160 points this week for Josh. I think this is the week he turns his season around. He's got some wide receivers back. He's not going to have to play these shitty waiver wire players anymore. So I think he's turning around big time this week.
We'll see if the frauds are able to get rid of that label that I.
Yeah, if they lose again this week, they are big time frauds.
And let's head to game number 4 then, between the Revengers and the Dog Sniffers. Let's start with Sam then. Between the Revengers and the Dog Sniffers, who you got?
I've got the Revengers narrowly. I've got them.
All right, sounds good. Nolan, your own.
Okay, Sam, cool. I got Thomas. I just feel like I'm gonna have like 3 more injuries this week, just because that's my season. So.
You've had a rough bout, and I'm gonna have to agree with you. I got Thomas this week. Think it's gonna be pretty close. I think Thomas's team is also a bunch of frauds, but they keep so I don't know how to handle that information. So, good win in week 5 there, Thomas, over me. But we'll head over to Drew then. Drew, between Nolan, Thomas, who you got?
I've got the Revengers, and that's my lock. Part of that is because some of this luck that Noel is dealing with is bound to reverse. Plus, Noel's team is actually still super good, even with the injuries and everything that's going against him. So I'm picking Noel's Revengers this week as my lock.
All right, John, down to you then. Between the Revengers and the Dog Sniffers.
Yeah, I agree with Drew. I think despite injuries, Noel's still starting an above average lineup this week. I'm taking the Revengers.
All right, and finally, Thomas Strawn, your own matchup against the Revengers. Who are you taking?
I'm going to take the Revengers here. As you guys said, I think that he's got a fairly good team, even with his players on bye. This is an ideal week to face him, but I still think that my players are going to give up hope this week and just shoot themselves in the feet.
All right, and finally, we're on to our game of the week between our 2 South Dakota teams of Drew Mahowald and Sam Olson, the Google team names versus the Gruesome Grinders. Let's start with Noel then. Between the names and the Grinders, who you got?
Yeah, I got Drew winning this one because I feel like Drew hasn't had the best luck this year either. And I think his team is going to start playing better than they have been. So, sorry, Sam.
They haven't even been playing that bad. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I know, but he's got the second most points. So.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. They haven't been playing that bad.
No, I know, but just his luck with the scoring.
Totally.
Everybody here knows I'm big on the Google team names, but this week I'm taking the Gruesome Grinders. It's a tough week for Sam. It's going to be looking like. I just don't love the matchups and got to take the GGs on this one. But we'll head over to Drew now. Drew, who you got in the GGs versus the Google team names?
I have the Gruesome Grinders. I'm very excited to start Alexander Madison this week against the Falcons, so that should be a fun one. So I think my running backs are going to put up some points this week. I got my squad.
Wonderful. All right, John, who you got in the matchup of the GGs versus the Google team names?
The GGs, and they GG it. Easy. Big win.
All right. Then we'll head over to Thomas then, between the GGs and the names.
I've got the Gruesome Grinders here to win narrowly, just slightly, but I do think that they're going to pull out this week. Their team's been performing well all year. They've just getting outclassed on other teams' lucky weeks. So I think this is the week Drew pulls forward here.
And finally, Sam Olson, final answer between you on that.
I think I'm going to do my best Lee Corso impression of Not So Fast, My Friend. I've got the Google team names narrowly, but I think my team, even with having some bye week issues, I still think and believe in my team to get one more here this week.
Respect. Believe.
Yeah,
believe
always
your own
believe.
team.
I would say I'm rolling with them. I think this is probably my best start in the league. Zach can check the database for me on that one, but I don't think I've ever had this many wins at this point in the season, so we're just going to keep the pedal down.
I love your confidence, Sam. Let's see here before we log off. By far your best start in the league, going 4-1.
So it's already a success. I could lose the rest of the regular season, and it's a success for me at this point.
Sam, I love your definition of success.
Yeah, that would still be a failure.
Not mediocrity
But
is a
that's okay.
success.
Well, as we all know, Tony's definition of success is just beating Noel.
This is correct.
Yeah, apparently.
Correct.
All
Tony's
right,
correct.
definition is having young players. That's all that matters.
Also correct.
Also questionable.
we actually have one bonus category for today, and it's going to be lightning round. Will Tony play the correct quarterback in week 6? Go.
No.
Drew, we're starting with you.
No.
John.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Sam.
Not a chance.
No.
No.
And I'm going to go with a no. I think that he got lucky this week. He's never going to make that same good decision.
Water finds its level.
Is that worth
All right,
half a
folks.
point?
We'll see you soon, and the leaderboard's coming up now. Thanks, Pick'em Players. That is all we have for this week on the Rat Hole. I'm your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten. And remember to vote. Wait. Also, remember to tell me you voted, like for real, in the actual election. Because the day after the election, everybody who has told me they have voted, I will just deposit $5 of Fab money in your Fab accounts for doing your civic duty. All right, now that's all we have for the Rat Hole. I'm your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten. And remember to vote.
Are you
In your bathroom?
Yeah, I'm gonna brush my teeth.